Hey, my name is shawnshawn. I sell art on shawnshawn.co. Today we're going to react to Bobby Chiu. So, Bobby Chiu is, I think he does mostly digital work from what I can see. So he has kind of art and life as an artist as kind of his banner for YouTube. I think it looks pretty strong. He has Imagination Studios, which is kind of a joint studio, runs with I think 4 artists. I don't know what this is. Instagram, Schoolism, and that's it. And then he has kind of one of his drawings is kind of his logo. I guess that works since you know what style of art it is versus just the photo. So as long as you have a particular style, that works, I think. But usually you want the face, but I mean, it's fine. I mean, you can go either way. So he has one of his time lapses as intro. He has upcoming live streams, uploads, popular uploads. So generally I recommend popular uploads on top and then everything else. Speed paintings, choose stream, artist interviews, tutorials, little plant thoughts and philosophies, playlist, multiple playlist shorts. So he has a little bit of everything. It's a pretty good, solid. All right, let's look at the first video. This is called Time to Evolve Painting Time Lapse. Let me turn it down. It's still pretty loud. So I think what I'd add here is maybe just have a straight on headshot to kind of show what they're going to talk about and then start it off. But some artists like to start this way, just jump straight into it without really a personal introduction. But you never know who's going to jump on your channel. They might be a complete newbie. And like I know from my stats, it's like maybe 95, 96% are practically new. So if you don't introduce yourself every video, you kind of, those people are lost basically because they're like, who is this? Why should I care? Kind of thing. So. But it isn't bad to kind of jump into a drawing like this, but it's kind of good to show like maybe the finished drawing and say, hey, I'm going to work on this today and then jump into it. That's what I would recommend. So I'm going to skip ahead just a little bit. More finished part. So he's changing it quite a bit as he goes along, which is pretty interesting. And I think if you did a voiceover here, it'd be better also as well. If you're not going to be in the video, but just voice over it. And then obviously drop the music lower. Let's skip ahead just a little bit here, guys. Kind of filling in those 3D effects. Let's skip ahead a little bit. So I guess he's at a neutral background. I'm not sure why he didn't do the background first, but I guess with digital you can work any way you want. Skip ahead a little bit more. We're really close to the end. So I guess he does it in grayscale first and then he colors it later. So let's see the final product here. We'll get to the end. So I think it's pretty cool. I mean, you get to see how it works in a digital scale, and he's time-lapsed it, so it's really fast. So I think that's pretty cool. Let's get into the next one. The next video is called 6 Bad Artist Habits to Avoid. And this is a really old video from 2017, but it's still really popular, so I'm kind of curious to see what's it about. And also to see if it holds up, because a lot of videos don't hold up from that far back.
Hey everybody, welcome to Chiu Stream.
So he has kind of an introduction of himself in the background.
Talking about art and life as an artist, here's your host, artist and educator, Bobby Chiu.
So it has a really crisp sound from the introduction, and that's because they don't have soundproofing. So what you want to do is you want to have material like this, and then in the corners you want it the curved version, and what that'll do is it'll give a way softer sound, and so it won't have that crispness. There's no echo, so the sound's pretty good, but it's just a little bit tinny, I would say, and I think it's just because of that lack of soundproofing.
As we travel through this road called our art careers, one has to be careful of taking the wrong turns and making sure to avoid bad habits. For more than a decade, I found many of these bad habits to be quite common.
So this is really cool. He shows the 6 bad habit. He's drawing as you go along, so that's really nice.
In this video, I want to share with you 6 habits for us to avoid so that we can have wonderful, long-lasting careers.
Let's get to one here.
Very different from what I do. Or is it? The thing that I took away from him is that Sergio Aragonés's work is so universal. You don't need to know English to really understand what he's trying to say to you. You could speak only Chinese, only Arabic, only whatever. His humor is universal, and that was something that I loved about his work, and I try to put that into my work as much as possible. Then there's other influences like Steven Silver, Peter DeSev.
Skip ahead a little bit.
Even if you found a style or an artist that you really love, I'm telling you, don't stop there. Keep going. And this is really hard for me to say because I'm a teacher. So as a teacher, naturally, you would want to take kind of like credit or ownership for molding your students and making them awesome and developing them into wonderful, amazing artists. But the best way I can do that is to tell them, this is how I do things. These are my thoughts behind my process, but please do not stop there.
Yeah, that's really crucial. You gotta, kind of learn from different artists, different, really great habits from different artists, and kind of composite that, and then slowly stew it over, and slowly work your own style, and it'll develop. So you don't want to, copy directly. You want to do your own thing. So let's go ahead a little bit.
Project, and you have tons of work, and it's a wonderful time. People like Crash McQuarrie comes to mind for this example. He worked on things like Jurassic Park. He's worked on things like Pirates of the Caribbean, designing the incredible, iconic character of Davy Jones, as well as so many other movie projects. If you just look up his name, Crash McQuarrie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if you look for his website, you look for his social media, I don't think he really has any.
That's kind of weird. Why wouldn't you have your own website? It's kind of, obviously he's huge, but it doesn't make sense not to have your own website.
Been able to work for decades doing amazing, top-of-the-line projects that anybody would be lucky to be a part of. But I can tell you that that will become more and more of a rarity, especially for the people that don't actually live in the hub of wherever the industry is happening. But even if you do live in one of these booming cities for your particular art industry, I'm telling you, it's still super important to keep posting on social media, to keep putting your stuff out there. I've seen too many people kind of depend on the studio that they're working for as their claim to fame.
Yeah, I could definitely say that would be horrible. Let's go ahead a little bit.
The people that have been putting their names out there all this time, those are the ones that will bounce back the quickest generally. The third habit to avoid is being all about business 24/7. I've always prided myself for my efficiency. I'm always trying to be more and more efficient. I'm always trying to do things in a quicker, better, faster way. For example, nowadays I have a lot of meetings with very high-profile artists and trying to help them create their schoolism class. Now, these are people that are extremely busy, people that have a lot on their plate, a lot on their schedule. So I try to make it as easy as possible, trying to make these meetings as short as possible. So then I would just make it all about business. Let's talk about task 1, task 2, task 3. How did they go? Do you need any help? What's next to work on? And even though this can be very effective to produce work, I think in the long run, it's still really important to work on your personal connection as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important. You got to have those relationships. There's another rule here.
Motivation to push even further. So by getting to know people on a personal level, you'll be able to know what will move them better, what to avoid, and everything in between to make whatever it is that you guys are trying to do more effective, more efficient. Number 4, one of the big habits to avoid is getting jaded. Now, a lot of times this usually happens to more like veterans in the business. They've been in the business for like 10 years and they kind of hate it. But I've also seen this with many just students even. It's getting jaded super quick. One priceless piece of advice came from one of my absolute artistic heroes that I feel very privileged to call my friend, Brenda Chapman, first ever female director for animated film to win the Oscar. And she said, when you're not feeling good about your project and things like that, what you want to do is focus in on the slices of that project that you really love and really try to expand that.
All right, so let's move on to the next rule.
Number 5 habit to avoid. Don't tag artists on your work so that they'll look at it.
I've never done this.
This is a horrible habit. You know, years ago, it came in a different way. Perhaps it was on a forum, you put up some art, people go and they look at your art and they go, nice job, and then they go, check out my work. Or they just simply say, check out my work, and they put a tag there. Exposure isn't always good. You want to have the right kind of exposure. You want to send the right message. Nowadays, I get tagged on my Instagram or whatever else on a constant. Does it make me want to look at your work and say how awesome it is? Actually, never, because it's kind of annoying. Well, then how do you get people to look at your work? If we want people to be helpful to us, then we have to try to be helpful to them. And a lot of times, if you want to start the interaction, then start being helpful to people first before you ask them to do anything.
Yeah, you just like them, comment, don't expect anything back, and eventually they'll like you. So that's kind of a no-brainer. But yeah, some people just immediately start pitching.
To answer. Another really great way for artists that you admire to notice you, appreciate you, and appreciate what you do is first be an advocate of them. You know, if you
All right, let's go to the next rule.
don't stop learning. Learning is the ultimate antidote for most, if not all, the different problems you can have in your art career. Even people that have a bad attitude, to a certain extent, if they kind of have like not so good attitude, but they can draw and paint amazingly, they will still get jobs. But of course, it is much better if you don't have a bad attitude. If you never stop learning, people will notice you a lot more. So when you put stuff on social media, it will gain the attention of the right people.
So I think that's a pretty good set of rules. Let's move on to the next video here. This one is interview with Brahm. It's 58 minutes, so I'm gonna have to kind of jump around quite a bit. It's interesting.
Looking
They
for
only
more
filmed at
artist
7:20.
interviews after this one? Watch all the past Schoolism interviews for free at schoolism.com. There you'll find hundreds of interviews from successful artists and creatives behind your favorite movies, games, animation, illustration.
So that's a really cool thing. He has. I didn't even know about. I know a little bit about Schoolism as far as being kind of an artistic school online, but I didn't know that they had actual interviews. So let's skip ahead just a little bit.
You think about all sorts of like drinking from a chalice instead of a paper cup at one of these events or something like that. So I want to just start off asking like, what do you think are the misconceptions?
So you hear that sound is a little bit tinny because of lack of soundproofing, but it's a good sound quality, but obviously good content, obviously from an expert artist, but with a little bit of kind of hanging curtains or heavy cloth or something, you would get a little richer sound.
Who is the real Brahm? Or how is the real Brahm different from the persona online?
Oh, that's a hard question to start off with.
So you can hear immediately he has a lot of echo. He has no soundproofing at all, so it's just...
Pre-internet, pre-social media, you could sort of project a brand or an image of yourself out there. But these days it's hard to hide, and I have to say, more than once I've had people come up and meet me at conventions and tell me they were disappointed in me in person, meaning that they had this preconception that I would be a bit of a creepier, more intimidating fellow. But
All right, let's skip ahead to the next question. Sorry, guys. It's probably a really good interview, but really great art.
it's that positive reinforcement, helping them discover what they're good at and pushing that forward. Yeah.
And then also, during this time, I'm assuming you were somewhat of an army brat.
One thing I'll notice is not related to this at all is Gerald Brom actually has Gerald Brom as the Instagram, so he's actually used the same name twice. It's a much stronger branding if possible. Bobby Chiu, you can see his digital Bulber, which is probably kind of one of his characters he draws, but it's kind of like, if you don't know what Bulber is, like you don't know that character, it's going to be meaningless. So it's always better to brand yourself. I use a fake name, but I try to stay consistent to shawnshawn, so across the brands you'll kind of see that name and you're like, oh, that's probably Shawn.
Place to place regularly.
Oh yeah, and again, I'm sure everybody's personality is different. But for my personality, I thrived on that. Every 3 years, we moved. My dad was in the Air Force to begin with, and we lived in Japan for 3 years, and that was the first 3 years of my life. And just that barrage of Japanese animation and Godzilla movies and Ultraman, it was just such an inspiration for me, even at that age.
Yeah, that's really cool if you live in multiple countries. I've lived in Europe, and I've definitely got a lot of influence in my art from different things I've seen abroad that you wouldn't necessarily see, like especially the geometric. It's very common in Arabic painting, which is common in southern Spain because they was ruled by the Arabs for 800 years. So there's definitely a lot of that influence there in calligraphy, and like a lot of Western artists, for example, they'll say like, don't do calligraphy or whatever in your artwork. And you're like, dude, that's the basis of all of Islamic art. What are you talking about? So it's just like, like this picture in itself, you could actually add script, it'd be still cool. It might be a little more concrete versus if you don't have lettering, then you don't know what it means. So it could mean anything. You can interpret it more broadly. But yeah, it's interesting how those different impacts as a kid will impact your art. Let's go ahead a little bit more.
A lot of time in the library with my friends. It was kind of the safe place. And that was when I really, I discovered the Lord of the Rings and Elric and a little bit of miniature gaming. And it was because perhaps I wasn't as involved in some of the social shenanigans. It, again, was a place for me to really find myself in the things that I loved and things that I've continued to love my whole life.
And that by itself is very interesting.
And I think especially if you're doing character figurative, it's very important to involve different histories and different novels like The Lord of the Rings, all these great novels. You can really use this as a basis for not just comics, but you can also use other stories like Lord of the Rings, which is a written form generally. They have some drawing that goes with it generally, but generally it was a written form only. So it's kind of like you use your whole imagination. There's a lot of sci-fi stuff that's really great, and you can get inspired by that as well. So there's a lot of different novels I think would be a great inspiration for drawing itself. So it's great to be a really broad reader, I think, of literature to really put that into your art, especially if you're using some kind of symbolism and realism, you're doing figurative. So
because, some of your most viewed work is actually work that nobody knows is yours, like Smucker's labels and things like that, right? And I wonder, at that point, it's like you love drawing skulls, you love drawing a certain genre of things, you love to do things that are very imaginative, yet you're starting off your art career doing things that would actually shock many of us, knowing like, that's what you did? Were you happy doing that?
That goes, so my whole life.
Gotta pay the bills, man.
Up until art school, drawing and painting, whatever came into my head, just, making my drawings, writing my little stories, making my little books. And you follow your muse, which to me, no matter what type of art you're doing, if you're following your muse and doing what you want, that's fine art. And I get to art school, and as I mentioned, all the teachers are like, no, you can't do that, you can't make a living at it. And again, in fairness to them, there weren't art school was full of a lot of kids like me that had lots of dragons in their portfolios, and there weren't a lot of jobs. in the 80s for people who wanted to draw and paint dragons and monsters.
What do you mean? There's Dungeons and Dragons. That was the height of Dungeons and Dragons. But yeah, that was probably it. Let's skip ahead a little bit further in the interview. I know I'm kind of jumping all over that.
Cutting friskets and everything about it is just very unintuitive and very annoying, and very unforgiving is a good word for it. But immediately I started painting in oils. The fact that I was on staff was a real break, because those first couple of oil paintings were not the best, but because I was on staff, I did get to do another one and another one. And slowly, like with any craft, you start to get a handle on it. But the question you asked me is, sort of the basics of my technique. Some of my commercial artwork technique did end up spilling over, because in the commercial art world, you had to turn things around so quickly, sometimes in just 1 or 2 days. So that's part of the reason that I worked in acrylic with airbrush.
Yeah, so I think I'm going to leave it there. There's a lot to this. I'm only seen half the video. Obviously, it's going to be a lot in that interview to unpack. Let's go to his website. So he runs a studio together with 4 artists, I believe. It's called Imaginism Studios. So it says it's founded in 2005. It's concept design for TV, gaming, publishing. So it has some of the artists. It has Bobby Chiu, Kia Sedra, Masai Seki, and shawnshawn. He has his schoolism links, live workshops. Let's see what that looks like. And live workshops. I'm not sure why he doesn't have his own website. That's kind of weird. I looked it up. I didn't see anything. The YouTube didn't have anything, so it's a little strange why you would not have that as a solo standalone like Bobby Chiu. I don't know exactly why that is the case, but maybe he just wanted to sell together. So he has Bobby Chiu, he has this guy doing the prints. Maybe it's just they don't have a limit at a time, so they're kind of doing it together. Maybe that's why. I'm not sure exactly why this is all together. And this is very different than the rest of the website, which is a little strange. Probably because it's a shop overlay on top of it, so it's not the same feel as the rest of the website, which is a little bit of a downside. But the main thing is you can sell the prints, and they got books here. So a lot of different books. Really amazing. It's pretty good quality too. I mean, for $25, it's super cheap for an art comic book. I think they're kind of doing illustration. He has this. They have some apparel to kind of go with that. It says it's always great. He's really branched out from the originals. He's doing prints. He's doing books, which I think is more his core thing. They have a little bit of apparel. And so you have all these different shop items that kind of drive different revenue streams into the business. And a lot of them to work full-time in art versus, just kind of work half-time. So that's ideally what you want to do, is generate as many revenue streams as possible. First, kind of master one, like master selling a painting. You get good at that, then start doing your prints, and then start doing your T-shirts, and kind of branch off that way. You definitely want to create a lot of multiple streams that'll help cover. Sometimes you won't sell paintings, you sell more drawings or more prints or more clothing. And all that kind of even outs the revenue stream, so you have a little bit better control of your expenses and revenue. That's really important as an artist. Let's see what it says at home. I guess it's going to take us back from what I can tell. Yeah, this will take us to the first page, which is going to look different than this. So yeah, it's just a little strange. I think I would match this to match the shop maybe. But anyway, it's fine. And then they have a list of their clients so that you can see they're really big artists, so it's a really strong branding point. Anytime you sell or you are mentioned in PR, you want to have these kind of logos out there. Like if you're Newsweek, mention Newsweek. If you're Fine Art America, put the Fine Art America logo. These guys are working with huge studios, Netflix, Hasbro, Blue Sky. And these are huge, huge properties, huge companies. Autodesk, I worked at Autodesk, but not as an artist. But that's well known in the industry because they have one of the top design software. So yeah, that's just a really pretty strong website. There's no blog per se off the website, but they probably don't need it because they're well known already. But it would be nice kind of have a blog or, maybe a click to the Instagram. I don't know if they have that. I don't know how I feel about social media leaving the website, because then it's like you're sending them to somewhere they get mixed up with other artists. While you're on your website, you kind of wanted to push them to the store, and that's it, really. There's no email gathering. I don't know why. Well, let's see. Connect. They should have an email here. Ask away. General question project. I need advice. So that's kind of cool. He has one for artists. General question, which is probably our project. So that's kind of cool. I don't know if they do a newsletter or not. Maybe they do. Maybe they don't. It's not obvious here. But they have a really nice, simple website, which is kind of good. You don't want to have too many distractions. My website's probably overly complicated, but I don't know where to pair off. I'll show a page, take it off, add a page, take it off. It's like the ideal layout is like, who knows, right? Because there's so many different ways artists do it. Obviously, he's done the smart thing, which is get really good at art and then try to sell it. So that's probably the route you want to go to. But that's Bobby Chiu. Hopefully you guys like it. If you like to subscribe, you can subscribe below. And I'll see you on the next Artistry.